I call the Cuyahoga County Human Resources Appointments and Equity Committee meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county YouTube page. Calling the roll, Ms. Baker,
Here.
Mr. Gallagher, Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mr. Sweeney,
Present.
Ms. Conwell.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any public comments?
No, Madam Chair, no one submitted any public comment.
Thank you. If committee members, if you would take a look at the minutes from November 16th. There's a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Second, thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, minutes are approved from November 16th. Clerk, would you please read the first matter referred to committee?
Ordinance number 2021-0018, and ordinance amending sections 306.01, 306.02, and 306.03 of the county code to make any exceptions consistent with state law and to streamline the hiring process.
Thank you, and it looks like we are ready to go. Sheriff, welcome.
Morning, Madam Chair, and the committee. Thank you very much for allowing me to present on behalf of this ordinance this morning.
I believe, just for formality, if you can just list your full name.
Sure. My name is Christopher Violent. I'm Sheriff of Cuyahoga County. Thank you. It's my understanding that Cuyahoga County Codified Ordinance Chapter 306 became effective in 2012 with the specific purpose of eliminating inquiries into criminal history information on applications and with applicants until such time as a conditional offer of employment was made. This legislation was passed with the best of intent and for the purpose of making sure that an employment candidate is judged on the merits of their application and their qualifications prior to any assessment of the impact of any criminal history. Even in 2012, however, it was recognized that certain employment categories were impacted by criminal history data outside the scope of county control. For example, the current ordinance language accepts the positions of deputy sheriff and regional enterprise data sharing system staff from the ban-the-box language because felony convictions prohibit persons from serving in those positions as a result of state law and certification processes, something the county has no control over. We've determined that the same issues occur in our hiring of corrections officers, and we requested the assistance of the HR department and the law departments to assist in amending the ordinance to meet our expedited and voluminous hiring needs in corrections. I believe that this amendment may impact other county departments in very specific job classifications, but in our case, since an individual cannot hold a state certification as a corrections officer if they have a felony conviction in their record, it's in the interest of transparency and equity that we make those determinations as early in the process as possible so that applicants are not in the hiring process for a lengthy period of time with a possible false hope of employment. As you can see by the language in the proposed ordinance, the amendment leaves the ban-the-box implementation in place, including the requirement that the county apply a nexus test in the application of criminal history information. This is the fundamental heart of fairness and equity in hiring. It allows for qualifications to be the primary consideration for employment. What the requested changes in this amendment do solely is allow the county to inquire and utilize their history information prior to a conditional offer of employment in the very narrowly tailored situation where criminal history information is necessary to determine whether an applicant meets non-county certification or qualification standards that are set by law. Put more simply, we are asking to expand the exemption in the ordinance from deputies and red staff to include corrections officers. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions for you, and we would request that this be on second reading suspension. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Do we have questions from? Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
Through the chair to Sheriff Violent. Okay, I'm just trying to get this clear. So you're asking us, it's already, the ban-the-box is already established. And
Yes,
I
ma'am.
thought it was established for all county offices.
So in the current language in the code, there are exceptions already built in.
Right.
So all that this amended language is to do is to expand those exceptions to include corrections, because you cannot hold a job as a corrections officer with a felony conviction, according to the state of Ohio.
I'm wondering how that was overlooked, because I was a sponsor of.
Yeah, to be honest with you, ma'am, I don't know that that all existed prior to my time here. And I'm going to make an assumption, and this may or may not be true, but I would be willing to bet that there are perhaps some other jobs in the county that this would also apply to that were left out. There may be some professions that the county hires that require state certification where you can't have a felony. And I think what happens is that the volume of those cases when they come up is very low and very limited. We've come up against a wall where we're trying to have a high volume of candidates come through in a very short period of time. And so we're seeing this as a I guess, a stronger need.
As a problem.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'll reserve the rest of my questions for Albert.
All right.
Thank you.
And if we may ask Law, do you have a comment to make on what was just given here as perhaps a conflict of understanding?
No, the sheriff gave a good summary. My only comment would be that the way the revisions are drafted, it actually removes the exception that specifies specific positions and makes it more general so that it would allow the county to do that background check up front for any position where the law would preclude someone with a conviction.
So this legislation is broader than the sheriff is.
Right, well, the specific need right now is to be able to include corrections. So the way it's drafted, it removes reference to just reds and deputy sheriffs and makes the language clear that it's a position that's precluded because of some kind of conviction.
Thank you for that, appreciate it.
Sure.
Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to follow up, but it also includes the broader language?
Yeah, the language is made non-specific, so it doesn't reference particular positions, because those may change over time
Yeah,
based
so
on.
it's both.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I have another one, Madam Chair? Thank you. Hey, Sheriff, how are you?
Good, how are you, sir?
Good. Was there, just for curiosity, could have been a state law change in the 9 years that it's been in place for corrections officer, but the specific question is, in that window, was anybody hired with the felony? Because it may have been.
No, what has happened in the hiring process in the past is that we just couldn't ask those questions until after we gave you an offer of employment. Once we gave you the offer of employment, we would do that background investigation. If something came up, then we would revoke the offer. But that added to the length of time that the hiring process took place. And I believe it also gave applicants false hope that they may be employed when in fact they were not qualified. So
Got it. So just a normal process, the ban in the box wasn't
Yes.
there. You said you have a felony, you're qualified,
Yes.
and thank you. And you're just not allowed to be able to work because of that set of circumstances. Thank you, Madam Chairman and Director. Sheriff, as
Chair.
always. Thank you.
Councilman Miller?
This question is probably to the Law Department, but in section 306.03 in the draft ordinance, why is that section changed to reserve instead of just being deleted?
To be frank, I'm not sure why the decision was made to reserve that. That was originally, those edits were originally made by the law director, Greg Huth. So I can't answer that question. If there's a desire to just do away with it entirely, we can certainly do that.
I don't have a preference at this point. I'm presuming that the law director had some reason why he did that. So I would just ask that he get back to me and let me know what the thinking was on that. But I don't feel the need to change it at this time.
If you could have that directed to all members of the committee, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Any other questions on this? All right. The only question I may have for you, Sheriff, is do you find that this happens enough to have this legislation be written? Is it something where someone you really like, they have the qualifications, and then only to find out later when you're ready to hire that you can't? How often does that happen?
the only answer I would have for you right now is anecdotally. And Since I'm generally not the person directly involved, I'm only hearing it come up from my staff. But it happens often enough that I hear these stories on a weekly basis.
On a weekly basis, okay. All right. Yes, Councilman.
So, through the chair and going to Amy's point, I just want to be clear. So the legislation currently, and we had corrections, so we don't have page numbers, so I can't find the actual legislation through here, but I just want to be clear, why in the legislation can't we spell out the specific departments? Because I think, going to your point, you stated that it's kind of general, which kind of takes us back to what we fought against to begin with, so.
Madam
Yes, go
Chair,
right
to the,
ahead.
yeah, Madam Chair, to the councilman, I think your original question is exactly the reason why. When this legislation was originally drafted, there were things that weren't necessarily contemplated which should have been included. And I think the reason that the law department took the opportunity to make this a narrowly tailored generality is so that if and when the county does change operations, or if and when they notice a specific situation fits, we don't have to continuously go back and forth and update the ordinance. The ordinance is contemplated to corral all those possibilities as it's written.
Okay, by just making, through the chair, just by making that statement, not actually spelling out the departments, because I can remember very clearly going back to when it was passed, we also had these kind of questions in regards to Department of Children and Family Services, things, in those departments, making sure, because per state law, individuals couldn't work for certain positions. So this will not eliminate, I just want to be clear, it will not eliminate ban the box, but just in specific, and that's why I wanted to bring Albert up, because I thought we would have looked at something like that.
Yeah, and I wasn't present for those conversations. I do know that as we contemplated these changes, as we have really looked at the hiring process and revamped it in its entirety, and as you know, with the abbreviated hiring events that we are now having, the volume of applicants that are coming through brought this to light. When we originally proposed it, my original request for amendment was just to add corrections officers to the specified list. After consultation with law, we decided that perhaps it might serve the county better if we were to have a more general for other agencies that might be in a similar situation to be able to use if it fit. But I absolutely understand your concern.
Would it be helpful to have Albert step forward?
He can, because I understand what you're trying to do, but I just also don't want to reverse the
Yes,
whole
ma'am.
process of what we were trying to do back then.
Absolutely.
And, and so it's, by changing this wording, I'm assuming that it's going to be up to the administration. I'd rather it spelled out, whatever positions, my personal, I'd rather it spelled out which positions are not eligible. So for future sheriffs, future council, future everybody, that we're clear that this is not something that because Mike was here, Councilman Gallagher, and he had issues to this effect back then. And so I just wanted to be clear, and I'm okay with spelling it out. Albert, could you?
Chairwoman.
I think
Thank you, Mr.
I think you
Bucciani.
were in PRC back then, or HRC as it was back then.
When the original, I'm sorry, Albert Bucciani, Manager of Classification and Compensation for the PRC. Madam Chair, Councilwoman, are you referring to the original ban the box? That's correct. When it was originally passed in 2012, I was still in Human Resources.
Right. Okay. So your take on it, because I remember that was Hera was right. It was a big thing about doing this. So
It was, Madam Chair, Councilwoman, to Sheriff's point, he's exactly right, that at the time when the ban the box legislation was proposed and approved, not all positions were contemplated at that time. So they only included the position in reds and the positions for deputy sheriffs. If we had contemplated the corrections officers at the time, it would have certainly been appropriate to include them at that time, because As then, as with now, they are precluded from having felonies to hold that position.
Through the chair, has PRC taken a look at, since this discussion has come up, have you taken a broader look at any other positions that might need this change as well, since you stated that they didn't look at a broader look, which I'm kind of shocked because O'Hara was a lawyer back then.
Madam Chair, the PRC has not. I would defer to the Law Department and the Department of Human Resources with respect to looking at state statutes that prohibit certain felonies. I am aware that there are certain positions at Senior Adult Services and Department of Children and Family Services that prevent you from working with the elderly or from senior community. I don't know those positions off the top of my head, but I would feel more comfortable having that analysis done by the Law Department.
Okay. And so if I could ask, Madam Chair, that the Law Department kind of look at that overall, so when we amend this, it's amended permanently unless we change some classifications of jobs, because we didn't want to preclude, people from janitorial, anything that, we don't want to do that. We don't want to go backwards. So I'm just letting my colleagues know I feel safer if it's just a list in the legislation, not that many that couldn't be listed, so we could be specific. Thank you.
Any other, Councilman Gallagher?
Maybe a better question to Mr. Hoos. As drafted, this change, instead of identifying individuals, like say, adding the officers over at the jail, as drafted, this takes care of any issues down the road that the state may change the law and add certain specifications as far as needs and wants for those positions. So it would really be less advantageous to us to start specifying actual positions, and that this, as drafted, covers us going forward.
Madam Chairman, this is Greg Huth, the Law
Yes.
Department. Yeah, the way the Councilman described it is the way we were thinking of it, is that this now says it's required, or we can do the...
Excuse me, Mr. Huth, can you point the microphone up?
Oh,
Thank you.
we can do the background checks earlier in the process when law requires that they have, not that they don't have criminal histories that are problematic. So now if we feel more comfortable right now, it just says law, we could insert state or federal law into that sentence, so you're clear that's not something the county would be making a decision about. It'd be the other governmental agencies. But the way Councilman Gallagher described it is the intent, and the way it's written.
And as it's written now, it's just the county, so we would probably be best off amending it right now to state and federal laws
Sure.
dictating.
Yeah, that way we could narrow it. That way it gives you some comfort that it's not something that...
Right,
we
I
could
understand. I understand what you're doing. It's been a roadblock for numerous years, and it's taken us many years to get back here, which,
Yeah.
we're just as much to blame as anybody, so I can't point fingers. Well, depending on what the chair wants to do, I would make that amendment to this document, but I don't know what the committee wants to do.
I'm okay
Good for
with that,
that.
yes.
Or are two council members, do you have any questions, any concerns on the amendment if offered? All right, hearing none.
I think Mr. Miller, didn't you had a question
Could I-
for the, Greg?
Side of the
Yeah,
amendment?
Do you want to craft that?
yeah, it'll be easy. We can do that and hand it off to the clerk. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll just insert the words, the county is required by state or federal law to use such criteria.
Are you planning on doing that while we're still in session here?
We can.
This
I
was
think I've
a,
got this on my computer upstairs
That's pretty
somewhere.
much what you're going to do.
Yeah.
It sounds to me that's all
Yeah.
you would need to do.
Right. I can go find it and do that real quick. Let me answer Councilman
yes,
Miller's
if you would
question.
answer the question on the reserved.
There is a section 306.04, and I didn't want to renumber it in the event that 04 is referenced someplace else in the code. So that's why I just didn't change the numbering. We just said this is being reserved. So.
Did that answer your question, Councilman? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll be right back.
we can hold this until we get the language and go on to the next item? Does that suit everyone?
Well, he gave us the language, so I would make the motion to amend the legislation before the committee to reflect the verbiage that the law director just provided to us.
Would you like to make that motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor of supporting amended language, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none. The amended language has passed. Now we will support the 2021-0018 as amended. Do I have a motion to do that?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, is
Madam
that
Chair.
under suspension?
On you, it's right. If you agree to the suspension of the rules, that would be included.
I would so move.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none. This has been approved under suspension of the rules and as amended.
Thank you all for your consideration this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, if the clerk would please read the second item referred to committee.
Ordinance 2021-0019, an ordinance providing for adoption of modifications of Cuyahoga County non-bargaining salary Schedule B.
Welcome. Please state your name.
Thank you. Rebecca Kopczynski for the Personnel Review Commission.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here this morning on behalf of the PRC Commissioners to make a recommendation that you consider a change to Salary Schedule B, which is essentially increasing the minimums and the midpoints and the maximums of the pay grades in that salary schedule by about 6.25%. Salary Schedule B is the compensation structure that the county's classified non-bargaining unit technical positions are on in IT. The schedule is essentially a chart of 25 different pay grades, each of which has a span of about 40% wide. And this is a separate and distinct chart from the chart that covers the pay grades for the rest of the county's classified non-bargaining positions. Just to give you a little bit background, Salary Schedule B was established in 2012 to address some of the pressing labor market issues at the time that were affecting IT positions. So they broke those positions out, created this unique schedule, and it has now been reevaluated since that time. So a couple of months ago, we were approached by the then Director of Human Resources, Jesse Drucker, and the Chief Information Officer, Andy Johnson, because they were having problems recruiting employees, and they were also concerned about the county's ability to retain employees. So we suggested, and we worked together to accomplish a review of this salary structure in relationship to the labor market. We worked with HR to gather information. I think we got information on 66 different IT-related positions, all from resources that the Human Resources Department has access to. So they have subscriptions to a number of providers that do salary research for them. This was reflective of both private and public employers, because we know when it comes to these administrative and professional type positions, the county doesn't just compete with other counties, we compete with the local labor market and private and public employment as well. So our initial analysis indicated that those pay grades did in fact need to be raised to be more reflective and aligned with the market. And we then took the raw data, gave it to our consultant, the Archer Company, to get a second pair of eyes on it. They came back with a similar recommendation. And because Archer originally developed that actual structure, we asked them to propose a new recommended structure. One of the questions that I did get prior to the meeting was whether or not benefits were considered. We did not include benefits in the actual study, but what the county's practice historically has been is to tie our midpoints to a point in the market that's about 10% below the average in the market to compensate for the difference. It's not terribly scientific, but it does acknowledge the fact that the county still offers a fairly lucrative benefits program. So I have both Albert and Andy Johnson and Sheba Marshall from HR all here to answer any questions that you might have.
Right, well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Do we have questions? Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
So, thank you for this, and I would certainly remind everybody about the tremendous challenges that we've had on filling IT positions, and And if we could get a little bit closer to the market, I'm hoping that this will be of help. So my question is how is this going to affect the pay of existing incumbents? And have we done any financial analysis of what the immediate cost relating to existing employees is going to be if this is approved?
Yes, there has been an initial analysis, and I'm going to answer this in part, and then I'll defer to Sheba and Andy to address the rest of this. Initially, the impact is going to be addressing those people who will fall below the new minimum. So my understanding, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's about $36,000 to get anybody who's going to be below those new minimums up to those minimums. Beyond that, that becomes an HR question. So I don't know if Sheba, you'd like to come up and address that.
Morning, Sheba Marshall, HR Director. So you're correct, it's roughly around $37,000 to bring anyone who would fall below the minimums. Right now, the intent is not to move anyone within the salary range because employees will stay within the salary ranges. They won't necessarily be moved out of them. But it does allow us to start looking at the market, looking at their job titles, their salary, and seeing if there's some equity adjustments that might need to be made. Or it gives us the opportunity, as we're looking for so many IT positions that we really, really need, it gives us the opportunity to offer them a salary closer to what's in the market.
Good, thank you.
Madam Chair, is there a step system within the salary classification where people who have had certain number of years of experience pretty much automatically move up the scale?
To the councilman through the chair, no, there is no longer a step system in place. We only use the minimum, the midpoint, and the maximum. Those were changed, and I'm not sure when, a couple of years ago.
So, but I presume it is the case that there will be some people that when this takes place, they're now at or close to the bottom of the range, whereby by experience and performance, they should be farther into the range, and that some adjustments are probably going to have to be required. Is that correct?
So what will happen is we can look at where someone falls, especially if they fall.
Excuse me, Ms. Marshall, please speak into the microphone.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
What we can look at is someone can ask for, according to the employee handbook, an equity adjustment, a market adjustment. So they can say, based on their salary, their skill set, their education level, we believe that the salary should be more commensurate with this dollar amount instead of that. We can then do a data analysis, a market data analysis based on what we see out in the marketplace and make that decision at that time. And then follow the employee handbook to do that appropriately.
So, am I hearing you correctly that we're not going to make any effort to look at all the salaries and make sure that there's a high level of internal consistency, but rather we're going to just respond to any incumbents that say, I would like my salary reviewed?
So I think at this time, and Andy, please, if I misspeak, let me know. I think at this time, we are not going to do that, to just sort of going through, but, Andy, if you want to.
Yeah, so Andy Johnson, Chief Information Officer for Cuyahoga County. So, yeah, I would agree with the sentiment of what we're saying here, right? We know that there's going to be 24, I think it's employees that are going to receive that bump automatically to the minimum. I think per the handbook, we will then wait for those equity adjustments to be requested. Now, we are also taking a look at flight risk employees and trying to then use this new scale to help there. And so that's going to be some discussions that I'll be having with the HR as well as PRC on these particular individuals. So, but Councilman Miller, to answer your question directly, we are not doing a wholesale evaluation of the team and then moving everybody up or moving everybody around. We're taking it individually.
So, Madam Chair, Director, the concern that I have about the direction you're going in is that when you hire new people, you're going to probably have to go farther into the range in order to be competitive and get them. And so then you're likely to end up with a situation where new people are being paid more money for similar or equal work than people who have been around for a number of years and are performing well.
And I think that's a very valid concern, and that's something through the mechanisms we have with equity adjustments where we can take those and make it an equitable pay range, right? So we can do that higher offer and then adjust equity as is needed. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know the process exactly well, but I think that's the process. So that would be how we would address that.
And final question, when somebody requests an equity adjustment, how long does it take to go through this process? As I recall, it's often been many, many months.
So I've never gone through one, so I might have to turn that over to.
Hopefully Rebecca can be
To the
helpful.
councilman through the chair. I think what you might be thinking about is the job audit process where people request a review of what their classification should be. And that did, in the past, that was taking a number of time, but you may also recall that we changed the requirement for reclassification to a new classification, so that bar went from 20% of your time being spent doing a different job to 50% of your time. And so those happen very infrequently now, and it happens much more quickly now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Welcome, terrific trio. Just with the equity adjustments that are going in now, it's going to be, when it's passed, or if it's passed, it's going to be available to be used. And you're saying that each individual can say, hey, there's an equity adjustment. This is, I'd like to be considered for one. That's what this is going to do. How are we going to let them know that this passed? Give them an opportunity to say, hey, this is new, come ask for it. Because if someone doesn't know about it, they can't ask through the chair.
Well, I was going to say, so one of the things, Councilman, is that I am working with our leader, the IT leadership, on this very legislation, right? That this scale is coming, and we sit and we meet weekly, and one of our topics that we talk about with my leadership team is those personnel. So that team is aware. Now, I can tell you that if we put out a broadcast, now I know this is public record, but if I put out a note that says, hey, who doesn't think they're getting paid enough, right? I will get 160 requests for an equity adjustment. So, I think that's something that we'll have to work with the HR team on, how do we put that message out there? Again, it is part of the public record. I don't know, Sheba, if we have any, I've never gone through one. How do we handle something like that?
So what'll happen is if someone were to come and say,
Excuse me, Ms. Marshall.
I'm sorry, thank you. I think I'm being underpaid. I think the market says that my salary should be higher. What we do is, and Kelly Neal does a very nice job of this, is she goes out on the market. We have 4 or 5 salary sources that we use, salary survey sources that we use. And what she'll do is use that job description, compare it to the job descriptions that are out in the market, and we get a salary range. And we get a range, a beginning, a middle, and an end, the same way our salaries exist today. And it'll tell us whether somebody is at the very low end of their market or at the very top end of their market, or if they're sort of right in the middle. And then we make a judgment on whether or not they should be moved based on flight risk, based on equity, based on market data. We make a decision at that point. And we, of course, would always discuss it with whomever the director or the chief would be to say what our findings are and how they would like to proceed on that.
Awesome answer. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Can I follow up?
Yes, go right ahead.
I'm just struggling a little bit with I'm not the administration. Please don't think I'm trying to dabble too much, because you need to run the world like we asked you to, and everybody's super efficient at their jobs. But I don't want to, I'm struggling with word of mouth, basically what it is. And Dale and I know way back when we did a sound insulation program, this is really cool, and it got traveled by word of mouth. Most impacted got left behind, and it would just turn out to be a cluster mess. So it's leaning me towards the original comments that Dale saying it's industry standard. We have all these other things, a whole global look at it all, and then through everybody, then it's over. Instead of waiting for each piecemeal one. So points to ponder, maybe. I'm not dictating. But I don't want to get caught up in the bureaucracy that is there for the daily workforce. It's stressful enough, their daily jobs and internal politics of the whispering and stuff just makes it more difficult for them. And my goal is to have the employees as satisfied with their job efforts and rewarded for their expertise and not have to deal with the sometimes petty stuff internally with the office, except for HR and IT, which have no petty politics in their office with employees. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Yes, Councilman Gallagher.
And this is just for IT?
It is, at this time, we have already begun discussions with HR about going out and looking at the rest of the positions that are covered by salary schedule A, because that too has been needed to happen for some time. We know that we're probably lagging
What has the law
behind.
department said about this?
Pardon?
What has the law department said about this?
I don't know if the law department has.
My concern is this. And I agree with market value, and I'll probably ask you also, who determines market value? If we're going to do market value for IT, specific group of people that I think Mr. Sweeney's going at, I can tell you right now, our sheriff's deputies, sergeants, and lieutenants are not at market value. And that is with smaller counties. So are we opening up a can of worms?
Well, I don't choose to think of it as opening up a can of worms necessarily. I think it's doing work that needs to be done typically.
I understand
Yeah.
that. I understand that. But I'm playing long ball.
Yeah. In terms of addressing this as an organization and looking across the board, now correct me if I'm wrong, I think some of the positions that you mentioned may be in a bargaining unit. So this is only for the non-bargaining unit classified employees. But I think in general, the county has been, in the 10 years plus that I've been here, we've been shifting to sort of more towards a market-based approach towards compensation. And originally we started out, we had the 17 steps across each pay band, and people moved almost annually across those steps.
And believe me, I understand what you're saying, but
Okay.
I'm playing long ball.
Okay,
Are we not setting the table for those bargaining units to come in and say, here's the market value, and it's going to be a substantial number? And our argument's out the window because of this maneuver, which I don't disagree with, because I understand the intricacies of hiring specific IT people, keeping specific IT people that are good, and we'll get into that, who's good and who's not. That's my concern. So that's my question is, what's the law department have to say about this? Because they do our negotiating.
right. And I haven't been involved in negotiations, it's not part of my job here at the county, but I will tell you that my experience in other locales has been that the bargaining units come in with data from other resources, and they use that as part of their
They're going to have
negotiation
some hard
strategy.
data now.
Right.
They don't have that to point at right now. They
Right.
will.
Right.
And that goes to my question of who sets the market value.
Well, the market value really is determined by this data. That's, it really is, this is a
Data
data-driven
from
recommendation.
Ohio or data from
This was
California?
regional. This was, for the
Regional?
IT positions, we did regional. And more than likely, when we go to look at Schedule A, we'll probably take a regional approach as well. But typically, employers tend to look at these salary schedules or their compensation approach every 3 to 5 years. We're way behind the 8 ball in terms of looking.
We struggle with that almost daily, it seems.
Yeah. So,
Okay. Could we get a list of the people that you're going to talk to as far as, because there's going to be, I'll tell you what's going to happen. There's going to be people on paper that will on paper deserve a bump. In reality, have cost this county millions of dollars with their untruthful statements to this committee. So I want to see that, and I want to pay attention to that. And hopefully, we don't have to have that discussion in public down the road.
So Councilman Gallagher, I can tell you that the 24 employees are of the classified nature. They are fairly, in the pecking order, fairly low in the organization. We certainly have that list of who's going to get that automatic bump, and I'm happy to provide that to your stance. Yeah, no, understood.
We do have, and I don't think I see our members, we do have the schedule, salary schedule B. I don't know if we should maybe make a copy of this and make sure that the other members have it before we approve this, just to see what the schedule looks like.
I don't have it. Drive me crazy. And my question through the chair to Rebecca, this Schedule B, this is the new one? It's changed?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I need to see.
It'd be good that everyone had a copy of it, and I think that Mr. Boyle is getting that for us. Is there, while we're waiting in law, is there any opinion as to what Councilman Gallagher brought up, that changing this in this department raises concerns?
Sure, thank you. Amy Marquette Renwald with the Law Department. I think a way to differentiate the bargaining unit employee efforts with the classified efforts is that this is an adjustment to the range. So it's not targeting specific salaries, it's just allowing the county to bring in people at a slightly higher amount at the max than we would have if we hadn't revised it. Whereas the bargaining unit employees are actually bargaining for specific increases to their specific salaries. So I see it as a little bit of a different scenario with the classified salary schedule than with the bargaining unit negotiations.
Okay.
And I just wanted to address the previous concern by the council regarding kind of one-off requests for increases. There's not a specific mechanism in the employee handbook, like an actual policy that says you can just come and ask for a raise. It's really driven by the department looking at its staffing chart and taking, a comprehensive look and saying we need to make some adjustments. So what is in the handbook is the classification analysis. That's the position audit. And it is true that in the past, through the audit process, there could be salary increases that had no connection to a change in classification. So there was a separate salary analysis that was being done. As it's written today, we are only looking at the job duties and whether they're properly classified. And if there's a change, then there can be an adjustment to salary based on that new classification and the salary range.
For those that are current employees?
Yes, yes. So really, what's driving these equity adjustments now is really the department taking a look and saying we need to make some changes in our salary structure for our current employees.
All right, so if I'm hearing you correctly, Councilman Galler's concern and also Councilman Miller, the incumbents, the people that are there now who may or may not understand that these ranges have changed and we're hiring at a higher rate than perhaps they were hired at, and could have their coworker at a higher rate than what they're working, could be an issue. And that it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, that is a matter that you will look at internally and bring to those employees' attention to say that things have changed and you may be entitled to a higher wage based on what we're passing here today. Does that sound reasonable? Is that, and I don't think I heard that from you. I think I heard that you're going to wait and see if employees get wind of this and if they approach you. I don't think that that's really what is coming out of this committee.
So, Ms. Baker, if I could ask for a clarification on your statement. So you mentioned the word entitled.
Be the wrong word.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You know, I don't know if there is an entitlement if we bring somebody in at a higher rate. I certainly, you know, I am motivated to keep our team together, right? And so making those equity adjustments is something I'm very interested in doing to keep that team together. And the whole purpose of this is to retain employees and to keep our team. So that factors in. I probably didn't articulate that very well, but that certainly is my motivation here. Entitled, though, that I would have to get advice on that. You know, if we bring someone at X and someone is at Y, are they entitled to get X? That I would need some assistance with.
Right, if they had the same qualifications, doing the same job, and are equal in the expectations, I don't know, is that then considered an entitlement to receive the same pay? If I may ask the law director.
Sure, thank you. My short answer would be no. So we have a mechanism where the county can do the equity study, and we've done a couple of those. The HR has led those equity studies, and they've done equity adjustments based on those studies, and that has been done every few years recently to correct those and just make those adjustments mid-department. But there is no entitlement either under the law or under the county's policies.
If I may, I think you may have, as Councilman Sweeney stated, perhaps an undermining of employees if they learn that they're working at a capacity and have been for many years, and someone who they may feel is equal to their skills is getting more in pay. That could be a morale problem that exists, and I would think you'd want to get in front of that before.
Yes, so absolutely, again, my motivation is to keep that team together, to keep that team operating, to keep the team, you know, moving forward where we want to go as a department. So absolutely understand that if we have people that are doing truly equal work at different pay rates, that's something we'll need to address. And that's, again, where I think we have this equity adjustment mechanism in place that we can use to make that happen.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Yes, Councilman.
Through the chair to Mr. Johnson, Director Johnson, have you evaluated the current employees of the issues with salary adjustments, the team that you're talking about?
Yeah, so that's something basically I do every week with my leadership team, right? I don't know all 160 people, you know, their work, but I have to rely on my leadership team. And so that leadership team, we discuss who and where our problems are, right? And so that's a part of what led to this is understanding, hey, we may have a retention problem. We need to make an adjustment, or we're having trouble pulling people in, and we need to raise that bar. I guess is the piece of it. But yes, so to answer your question directly, we evaluate that continually, and that's part of, you know, maybe I even said it a few months ago that when I first got here, writing people. On my whiteboard, I wrote people as one of the focuses that we need to do as a department going into 2022, focusing on not only just, you know, there's a lot of things that motivate employees. Salary is certainly one of them, but opportunities, training, responsibilities are other things that we'll be focusing on. So it is very much on my mind is, again, keeping that team together and keep our team moving forward.
And that's what I was aiming at, was there other things that you were going to try to do other than salary adjustments?
Yeah, and we have, you know, we have some work to do in our department, right? We have some, you know, it's been a pretty rough go over the last few years with a lot of different leaders and a lot of different opportunities that have come up. We're taking strides to try to change that, and that starts, I think, with leadership, and that starts with me and my leadership team. And you know, we're young in it, but I think we're making some progress.
And through the chair to Director of HR, in doing this, how will it impact other departments that aren't being paid market value, and also hard to retain employees? And I think there's IT. There's the Sheriff's Department, and there's definitely Department of Children and Family Services.
So, yeah, where there are bargaining units, I will defer to our Assistant Law Director. But where they are not, I have already contacted Archer, our consultant, to begin to look at countywide, what are our steps to take? If we want to look at countywide to see if that problem exists, that issue exists in other departments, other areas, well, we know they do. And then how do we go about starting the process, this same process for the other departments as well?
Okay, so at this current time, we're only looking at IT. We're not looking at the other departments, or we're not trying to put a fix to the other departments and their issues. And my issue goes to the point of Councilman Miller, the compression issues. So who's assigned, I don't know if it's in IT or in your department, who is assigned to oversee these compression issues so they don't occur with this equity adjustment?
So that would be, IT would let us know first.
Excuse me, Ms. Marshall, can you speak?
Oh, I'm sorry. So IT would let us know if there was an issue. I mean, it's not something that we haven't already looked at and haven't already contemplated, given what the salary changes might be. But it's something we would look at if that were to happen. Or there's a certain percentage that sometimes we look at where we think it's too close, and we address it without having a department, refer us to it or something like that. But
Okay, so going through the chair, this legislation is just, we vote on it, it's just basically going to change the Schedule B,
correct.
no matter which department is utilizing it at the moment, correct? And I just want to make a request before I'm comfortable with it in passing it from the committee of the whole. Can we have the previous Schedule B so I could see?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Would you like that before we vote here today? Does it matter? Okay, good. Okay, and this is only for IT. It's not Schedule B for other. It's only for.
That's correct.
Two things. One, especially with the ERP and Mr. Johnson, if I can have you answer. We've been through quite before you began here with the ERP project and the dependence on contractors.
Yeah.
So we haven't talked about that at all. Are your expectations that we will not be as reliant on contractors if we're successful in hiring at a better salary those that we need to be in the ERP?
Yeah, I think it's a very good call out that the county's dependency, not just on ERP, but I think in other areas on contractors is something that we need to take a hard look at. So specifically related to Schedule B, I think that's going to help us in attract talent, again, not just in ERP, but in other areas, and ultimately displace some contractors. Now, that's not our stated goal here, but I think that can be a byproduct of it. Specific to the ERP implementation that's occurring, we have a fairly short length left on that. I believe that if we were able to attract, say, the WFM, which we've spent a lot of time talking about, that may help reduce some immediate reliance on contractors. But I think that most of the work that those contractors doing on the ERP implementation is temporary in nature. But again, I think that we will be able to enhance our ERP team and as well as others and reduce that reliance on contractors.
Thank you. I know through the history, and I'm sure Councilman Miller would agree, that there are times when we did hire consultants because we just couldn't hire someone to be permanent. And we needed someone, we needed the expertise, we needed somebody to jump in, and there was no one from within to bring up. So I hear you on that, and hopefully we will hear that.
Right now, there will, just to clarify, there will always be a need in our department for contractors. And specifically, I think of things where you don't need them 40 hours a week. You need them in certain situations, or they have such an advanced level of understanding, security comes to mind, where they have such an advanced level of understanding that we couldn't possibly retain that type of person. But I think where we really have that opportunity is those contractors that we have employed 30, 40 hours a week. That's our opportunity.
Good to know. I appreciate that answer. Any other questions? Yes, Councilwoman.
Through the chair, just want to confirm, probably to Rebecca, these two charts, the previous and the current, these were relooked, the new one was looked at through Archer, correct?
Yes, it was.
Chance to look at these schedules. It is a considerable increase in ranges, and that's what we have to consider. And I hope that this will be successful in what it is that you're accomplishing in your IT department. So, just for the record, Clerk, we did get some correspondence from Commissioner Deborah Sutherlington and Commissioner Alan Boseman. I'd just like to add so that we have it on file.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman Miller.
Normally, this is something that I would recommend for 3 readings, but if we did that, then it would have to wait over the break into the new year. So because of that, I'm going to make a motion that we refer Resolution 2021-0019 to the full council with a recommendation that it be put up for second reading suspension.
Madam Chair, before we vote, can I ask another question? So, ordinance, I'm a stickler for 3 readings. So my question would be through the chair to whoever can answer. If we allow this to go 3 readings, is it going to impact the hiring process in any way? Or I assume that you're trying to hire positions for IT currently.
Correct,
So
yes.
I'm just saying, if we allow this legislation to go 3 readings, because it's going to be some issues that's going to come from it, would that impact you in your hiring during the course of? Ashley, this would get us, if we went 3 readings, is that January?
January, the first meeting in January.
So I think a couple things come to mind, and first of all, I just want to make sure that this gets out on the record is how wonderful and how collaborative this effort has been. I mean, I know it's a little unusual, but working with both the HR and Rebecca and Albert at PRC has been just a really great partnership. I mean, I think, Rebecca broke down some walls really to get this thing moving, and Sheba and her team have done the same. And so part of that, and part of our motivation is to hit this this year so that when the 2% increases come out, that those that are right at the very top of their pay scale, what my understanding has happened previously is that those they couldn't get an increase. And so what they received was like a one-time bonus check, but their salary went back to where it was before, and they started this process over again. So that affects our retention. And so what I would say is that there's motivation to get this done now, so that those folks, and there's not a lot of them. I think there's maybe a dozen or so. They're sitting right at that very top of our classified employees that now would be able to get that 2% and be able to carry that forward. So that would be my motive. That would be why I would really push to get that done more on the retention side. On the attraction side, it's certainly going to help. Sooner is better rather than later. But again, and that's where I go back to the effort that these two have done on the IT behalf to get us to this point. I'm probably, was slow to recognize how the process worked and how we make this happen. So I'm very grateful for how we're able to get to this point. So I don't know if I answered your question there, Councilperson, but
Yeah,
I'm motivated to get this done as soon as we can.
That's a great explanation for those 12 that are sitting right there through the chair to Director Johnson. They might not be at the top of the chart right now. The 12 that you talked about.
And 12 may not be, I'm going off memory
I
here,
gotcha. We'll just
a
use the
dozen-ish. They are on the old scale at the top.
Okay.
And now with the new scale, they would no longer be at the top.
Well, thank you. That helps a lot better, that it's more motivated toward the retention. And I take it that those 12 individuals have some knowledge. They retain, there's some older staff that we really can't afford to lose at the moment.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you.
You're good.
I'm good.
All right, so we have a motion to approve under the second reading suspension. I have a second Sweetie. All in favor of the legislation? Say aye. Is there any other questions? Doesn't look.
I could go on and on with questions for
Okay,
this.
all in favor of the legislation 0019, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, this legislation 0019 has passed under the suspension, second reading suspension.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Presentation, we appreciate it. Is there any miscellaneous business? Hearing none, we are adjourned.